Hello there. It's good to see you. This video is a little different. This one, I don't really want to call it an instructional video because it's not. Um, if you've ever wanted to write anything, like you want to write stories or poems or anything, you want to create on your own, I just thought I would give you some ideas and some things that I have learned from doing it myself. Now, I don't consider myself to be especially good at it, but I enjoy it, and that's really all I worry about. It's kind of like the way I see it, it's kind of like painting. You know, I think if you like to paint pictures, I'm not talking about like painting a wall or something like that. Well, if you enjoy that, that's good too. But if you enjoy it, I don't think it really matters if other people think you're good at it or not. I think the enjoyment that you get out of it is what matters. So, a little bit about my history with writing. I've always loved making up stories and coming up with the new ideas for things. When I was little, I used to like to take songs that I liked and I would rewrite the lyrics, and sometimes my brother would get involved and we would come up with funny lyrics for songs. And sometimes we would do that with commercials that had a jingle, just like a little song. We would rewrite the words to the song. And I grew up playing a lot outside. And I played by myself a lot because where I grew up, we were literally the only people on the road. I mean, we had no neighbors. None. We were the only house on the entire road. So there were really no other kids to play with. And my brother is 4 years older, and he was typically not interested in the same things. He was more of an indoor kid, and I like to go outside. So, and my parents were always busy. They both worked, and they were always tired and didn't want to do anything. So I spent a lot of time playing by myself, and I would take my toys outside, and I would come up with these stories for my toys and the adventures they would go on and things like that. So, that was my childhood. I mean, I grew up just, sometimes I would write down stories. I would come up with ideas and I would write them down. But, it's not anything I considered as a serious hobby. It was just something I enjoyed doing from time to time. And then when I got older, when I got into middle school and high school, I started writing poetry, and I wrote some short stories, and I really enjoyed it. Another thing, when I was a kid, I had 2 imaginary friends, and I don't know how common it is for kids to have imaginary friends anymore, but I grew up obviously before the internet and sitting in front of a TV screen all day, and I had 2 imaginary friends, and one was a lizard, and he kind of looked like the Geico gecko, only he was different a little bit. He was an anole, which is spelled A-N-O-L-E, and it's the kind of lizard that we have where I grew up. And it changes colors. It's not a chameleon, but they do change colors. Typically, when you see them, they're either green or kind of a brown color, but they can change their colors, not as drastically as a chameleon can. But anyway, one of my imaginary friends was an anole, but he looked a lot like the Geico gecko. He walked around on 2 legs, his 2 back legs, and he could talk, and he was very adventurous, and he didn't have a name. Neither one of them had a name. And the other one was a penguin. It was a little penguin, and he kind of looked like, if you remember what Chilly Willy looked like. Chilly Willy, I think he was a cartoon character or something. He looked a lot like that, only I think he was a little more pudgy, but he was very cautious. Now the penguin was very cautious. He was not interested in getting into adventures or anything like that, but the lizard was always getting into trouble. But I would imagine the penguin and the lizard having these adventures together, and the penguin always reluctantly going along with it, and the lizard sort of instigating everything. And actually, the lizard reminds me a lot of a character in a book that I wrote. We'll talk about that later. So anyway, like I was saying, when I went into middle school and high school, I wrote short stories and poems. Nothing very long. I mean, most of it was pretty short, but I did write a lot of poetry and short stories during that 7-year period from 6th grade through 12th grade. So yeah, middle school and high school, 3 years, and then 4 years. When I got into college, I wrote some poetry, but I was really so busy that I didn't have time to. When I got my psychology degree in 1995, and in 4 years, I was one class shy of a double major in psychology and English. And I was a research assistant for 3 of those 4 years, and I worked for 3 of those 4 years, 20 to 30 hours a week. So I was very busy. I didn't really have time for anything fun, really, which was kind of a bummer, but oh well. So I didn't write a lot then, but after I got out of school, after I graduated in 95, I took a year or so off to work full-time, pay some bills, things like that, and I did write more after that. And I actually wrote a book. I wrote my first book, which I finished in, I think it was 1997 or 98. It was not good. I'm not even going to, we won't even talk about it. It was no good. It was bad. But it was great practice. And that's why I say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're good at it or not. If nothing else, you get practice. You know, whatever you write, you get good practice no matter what. And you can always work on your technique or just the way you express certain things, the way you can take the detail in your mind and put it down on paper where the reader can see what you see. It's always good for that. Even if you go back later and read it and think, oh God, that's awful. It's not a waste of time. It's not, because you always learn something from it. So what I want to do, I really just want to tell you a few things that I've learned during my years of writing stuff. I did write another book, which was a sort of a sequel to the first bad book. The sequel wasn't as bad, but it was still not that great. I never did anything with either one of them. I have them, I typed them up. I did type them, and I think I actually have them saved on like 3.5-inch discs somewhere. I don't know, but I don't even know what I would do with those anymore. My computer doesn't even have a place to put the disc in. So, but I'm not really worried about it. But then I did write another book that I was serious about, and that to me was, you know, a legitimate effort at writing something good. And this is the end result. Now, this is a lot of work went into this, but I want to show you what I have here. And this is typed. This is the cover right here. And the title is River Road. And it is a fiction novel. And as you can tell by the cover, the cross, it does have religious themes to it. It's very thick. This is single space, double-sided. It's long. It is 753 pages. So I wrote this. It took me about 4 years and 4 months. It was just under 4.5 years to write this. And I am very proud of it. I am. It may not be good. It may be awful. I don't know. But I'm very proud of it. I am very proud of what I achieved in writing that. And but you know, I didn't do it in a day. And sometimes I think it's daunting to look at something like that and think I could never do that. But trust me, if I could do it, you can do it. But don't look at that. Just think about the beginning. You have to just take it in steps. If you do want to write, and that's something I would suggest, if you do want to write, take it in small steps. Don't worry about the whole thing. Just look at how you would start. Just think about, okay, what do you want to write about? Start there. And you don't even have to write anything down. If writing stuff down, if writing an outline or something like that makes you nervous, you don't have to do it. I had no outline. Literally, this book here, I literally made this up as I went along. I had no outline. I didn't know how it was going to end. I had no idea where this story was going to go. I had no idea. I just made it up as I went along over the span of 4.5 years. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the way it turned out. I like the way it turned out. But something I learned, the way I see it, if you ever write anything like that, well, my experience was that if you write anything like that, it seems like you think you have control over the story. You think you can control where it's going to go. You really don't have any control over it. The story will go where it wants to go. And you're really just writing it down. That's the way I did it. That's the way I feel about it. I was just writing down what I saw and heard in my mind. It's almost like you're watching the movie on a movie screen in your mind, and you're just taking notes, really. You're just writing down what you see and hear as it happens. You're not really in charge of it. The story tells itself, and you're just taking notes as it goes along. And it's really cool because you're the first person that ever gets to see this story unfold. And the more you write, the better you get at being able to see what's happening with all the characters and the story. You're the first person who gets to see all that before anybody else. And the more you write, the better you get at taking what you see and putting it into words down on paper in such a way that the person who reads it can see what you see and can see it very vividly, just like you do. That's a balancing act. You don't want to get bogged down in details, but at the same time, you want to provide details. You want to provide enough details that they can see what you're talking about. So don't worry about an outline. Don't worry about the finished product. Just worry about the beginning and just think about it. Take a few days and just every now and then when it pops into your mind, think about it. What do I want to write about? What sounds interesting to me? Do I want to write a novel? Do I want to write a short story? What do I want to write? And just go from there. And don't worry about it. Don't stress over it. It's supposed to be fun, not stressful. Although I will say, and that this has been my experience, when you first sit down with that blank piece of paper to start, it can be scary. It can be scary. And I'm not sure why that is, but there's something intimidating about that big blank piece of paper. And it's always scary for me to start. That's never gotten any better. I'm actually right now writing the sequel to this. I've been working on the sequel a long time. I've had a lot going on in my life, and I keep getting distracted from it. I haven't gone very far with it. But even with the sequel, even though I decided the sequel was just going to be fun, it was just going to be a fun, lighthearted romp for a few of my characters, I thought, I'm going to take these characters out, and we're going to revisit them 10 years down the road. We're going to see what they're doing. And it's going to be fun, frothy, nothing serious, just a fun story. It has not turned out that way. But you see, again, I don't feel like I don't decide where the story goes. The story decides where it goes. And it's taken some turns that I didn't expect. Really did not expect. And it's fascinating to watch it unfold. I keep going off on a tangent, I'm sorry. I've never actually done this, so I've never really talked to anybody about it. That's another thing I would say. If you do decide, especially if you decide you want to write a book, like a legitimate book, I would recommend not telling anybody. Because see, when I wrote my first story, the bad one, the one I'm not, it's bad. It's bad. The people I work with, I told them that I was writing a book, and they were fascinated. They thought it was great, and that's fine. The only problem is, they would ask me about it almost every day. Somebody would ask me how it was going, and sometimes I would go for weeks and just hit writer's block and not be able to write anything. And having people at work constantly asking me about it seemed to make it worse. It didn't help. It didn't motivate me to write more. I think it made it harder to write, to have people checking up and asking me about it all the time. And then over time, it seemed like people got frustrated with me. They would ask me about it. Well, how's the book coming? Well, I haven't really worked on it. Well, why not? It's almost like they were getting mad at me, like they were going to get something out of it. I mean, I don't know. They really seemed to get irritated with me that I wasn't finished yet. Fact was, I didn't know when I would be finished. I didn't know when I would reach the point where I felt like this is the end. This is the point of resolution. This is what we were coming to. This is the end of the story. I just hadn't gotten there yet. And it took a while. I think it took me about 2 years to write that book. The bad one. It was called Patchwork. And it was about a homeless girl. And it was not good. But people really seemed to get frustrated. And I decided then, I thought, if I ever do this again, if I ever write anything else, I'm not telling a soul. And I haven't. I work with people who, there are people I've worked with for 16 years. The place where I work now, I've been there 16 years. I can say literally no one there knows I wrote a book. No one. And no one knows that there's a sequel, obviously, if they don't know about the first one. And I'm going to keep it that way. Because that way I don't have anybody asking me about it. I can work on it in my own time, which for me is better because it's just too stressful to have people constantly asking me about it. So I would recommend not saying anything to anyone if you can help it. You might get excited and really want to say something, and of course if you want to, that's up to you. But I chose not to, and I will not tell anyone that I work with that I wrote a book or that I'm writing a sequel. It's just, I just don't. I keep that to myself. So there's that. Another thing I would recommend is this. This is a journal that I got, and it's just you can use anything. You could use a notebook if you want. What I used to do, I used to get those little memo pads, the little spiral bound, small. They were about that big, little memo pad. Of course, now I just use the memo pad app on my phone, and I do use that. And I would just, if I was at work or something and I had an idea for my story and I just wanted to jot it down, I would pull my memo pad out of my purse and just write it down because I was afraid I would forget by the end of the day. Oh, what if we have this character do this or have this happen? And I would just write it down so at the end of the day I could go back and look at my notes, and when I was ready to work on my story, I could incorporate that and I didn't have to worry about forgetting it. I found that really useful. So this, see, of course, this is just a little journal, and you could buy something like this. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It really doesn't. But this, something small that you could carry with you or keep in the car or just somewhere where you can get to it easily. Something where you can write down notes, or if you even wanted to start the story in something like this, like say, something I could do, if I wanted to, go outside at lunchtime, take my journal, take my lunch outside and, work on my story out there. Usually I go to the gym at lunch, but, I could do this, 1 day a week, 2 days a week, whatever works. Some people say it helps to set aside, 15 minutes a day, maybe right before bed, to work on, writing in a journal. You could set that time aside for writing your story if you wanted to. Although, if you're like me, what I found was when I set time aside at night, I would set aside 15 minutes, but I would end up writing for 2 hours until my hand was so cramped I looked like Fred Sanford with his arthritis, and I couldn't write anymore. Yeah, so time would get away from me. Next thing I knew, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm still up. But it was hard to stop because I got going on the story and it's like I couldn't stop. I was so into it that I kept, I didn't want to stop what I was doing. So yeah, keep something with you that you can write on, or use your memo pad on your app, on your phone or whatever. I mean, just something where you can jot down your thoughts or even work on writing actual parts of your story too. I mean, that would be fine. And it's kind of like, the way I look at writing is it's kind of like exercise. Not everything works for everybody. So, whenever you see these tips for working out and staying devoted to your routine, there are always some tips in there that just make me kind of curl up my nose, like find a workout buddy. They'll motivate you to work out. But if you're like me, I hate working out with other people. I want to work out by myself. I don't want to have to work out with anybody. When I go work out, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to socialize. I like solitary time. And sometimes when I go to the gym, that's the only time I have during my waking hours that I don't have to talk to anybody or answer questions. And I certainly don't want anybody going with me to the gym. I like going by myself. So that tip always makes me kind of go, ugh, God, if I had to have a workout buddy, I'd find excuses not to go work out. So, everything, it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. So whatever works for you, whatever helps motivate you to write is good. Whatever it is. If you have kids, which I do, I have two. So, and they're 7 and 11. So they're not, they're very much a part of my everyday life at night. They're not off doing their own thing or anything. They're right here with me. While they're playing or doing whatever, I'll, slip away for 10 minutes and sit on the bed and pull out my notebook and write a paragraph or two. You do what works for you, and what works for you may not work for somebody else. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about what other people find useful or whatever. Don't worry about other people, period. They don't matter. If you want to show your story to people as you go, I think that's fine if that's what you want to do. But if you get a negative, somebody's critical and they don't like it, don't let it stop you. Don't. I've had that happen. Don't let it stop you. Because if you enjoy it, ultimately that's what matters. I would say don't get into it thinking you're going to be a millionaire, because very, very few writers ever make any money at it. Not to say that you can't, but I don't think that should be your ultimate reason. That shouldn't be your main reason to do it. I think if you're just in it for the money, it's not going to be any good anyway. I don't care about the money. The way I look at it, and I read this somewhere one time, I don't remember who said it. And I think this goes for anything creative, whether it's music or dance or, art, writing, whatever. The anxiety that comes from not doing it is greater than the anxiety of doing it, if that makes any sense. Where it's kind of like you feel like it just builds up in you, and you just have to let it out. You have to write, you have to sing, you have to dance, or whatever it is that you feel you have to do. If that anxiety is stronger than the anxiety you experience from getting started on writing that book or getting started on composing a song or whatever, that's when you create your best work, is when you take that anxiety and you channel it into creating something wonderful. I don't know if that makes any sense, but you know that you are a writer when you feel it. You feel it in you, and you have to let it out. And it gets so bad that you can't stand it. You have to sit down and write it down. You have to get it out, or it won't leave you alone. It won't. You can't stop thinking about it until you sit down and write it out. And that makes you feel better. It does. It always does. One thing that helped me, and it's not something I did deliberately, but one thing that helped me write was the fact that in my job, not anymore, but when I first started where I work now, I did a lot of transcription. Not some of it was dictation, but a lot of it was conversations, where I would either transcribe a telephone call between two people, sometimes more than two, or I would transcribe a board meeting, any kind of meeting where you have two or more people talking, and you get a feel. And I did literally hundreds of hours of transcription over the course of several years. Telephone calls, meetings, anything where you had just people talking back and forth. And I got a really good feel for the flow of dialogue and the way people really talk. I mean, people in the real world, the way they talk, not the way a script might read or the way people on a TV show might talk. I mean, but the way real people talk. And I think that helped me a lot when I was writing this story. It helped me a lot because there's a lot of dialogue in here. It is very heavy on the dialogue. And that helped me make it realistic. It made it sound real, like, not stilted and phony. It sounds real, like you're really listening to people talk to each other. And something about hearing it and then typing it and seeing it on the screen made it even more real. It sort of helped really drill it into my head. Okay, this is dialogue. This is what it sounds like. This is what it looks like. Hours and hours and hours of that made a big difference for me. So one thing I think you could do, just listen to people talk. I'm not saying, be nosy or eavesdrop or anything, but just, if you're walking down the street or you're in the elevator or wherever and there are other people around and they're talking to each other, just listen to how they talk. And imagine the words in your mind. And this is something I still do all the time. Just listen to the rhythm of that conversation. And imagine the text in your mind like you were reading it in a book. And with all the pauses and people stop and start a lot when they talk. And a lot of times you don't see that in written dialogue. But people start and stop a lot, even if they're not interrupted. And I did incorporate some of that in here because it kind of shows, to me, it kind of shows the way people process things in their mind. It gives you sort of an insight into, okay, they're saying this, but they're also thinking about something else. And that may kind of bleed through in what they're saying, if that makes any sense. But listen to people talk. And, again, you're not really listening so much to what they're saying as to how they're saying it. And I think you could learn a lot about dialogue if you're writing anything that has people talking back and forth. I think it comes in handy. I'll show you just some little things. I write a lot of it longhand. Not all of it. A lot of it I type because I can type a lot faster than I can write. But sometimes there's just something very comforting and almost meditative about writing it down. Like here, this is my current notebook. This is where I've been working on the sequel, and it's really sad because I just realized it's dusty. That's sad. It's very dusty. Oh, I need to work on it more, obviously. But I just use a spiral notebook. It doesn't matter what kind. I think this is college ruled paper. What you can see here. See, I have dialogue, like this page that I just opened it to a random page, and there's a lot of dialogue in here between the characters. I think we have, I think there are only 2 characters in this particular part, but they talk to each other. They talk, and then there's narration, and then they talk some more. And I number the pages. This is page 150. So far, and I don't write on the back because sometimes I can make notes on the back of the page. So far, I am up to page 153. Handwritten. This sequel is all handwritten. I don't think I've actually typed any of it. But I just get a notebook. Doesn't matter what kind it is. But I wanted to show you. And this is just some. This is not all of my notebooks. This is how much work I have put into my writing. And this is a lot of this is from the one I showed you. Look at that. These are notebooks that I filled up with my story, and I did make it up as I went. I mean, I really did. Like, see, on this one it looks like I wrote on both sides in this notebook, but they're very full. I write everything in cursive. See, It's all in cursive. And sometimes I'll go back and read it, and I will add little notes in the margin over here. Like here it looks like, I haven't looked at this in a long time, but it looks like I printed some out of what I had typed, and I made some changes to it. Like I printed, what I would do sometimes I would print it out and then read over it. And sometimes I would change, I would see things that I didn't like, and I would go back and fix it. Wow, there's a lot of notes here. Look at that. I wrote all up in here. All down here. My God. So, and see, I mark out a bunch of stuff. I think one of the hardest things about writing is going back and eliminating stuff. Like, there was a whole big section that I wrote in this story, I remember, because it took me several days to get up the nerve to do it. But there was a whole section I wrote in this story. It was kind of some backstory, some information on one of the characters. And I want to say it was at least 50 pages of text. And I went back and took all of it out. I went back and deleted all of it because I decided it didn't really add anything useful to the story. You know, it just made it longer. But sometimes you just have to take stuff out because it doesn't do anything for the story. Wow. Oh my God. Here is where I remember writing this. When I was first coming up with my characters for this story, I wrote down, I remember doing this when I first started this. I just wrote down some names, the names that the characters were going to have, and the places right here. And the places that I thought would be important to the story, and like a little, not really a map, but where where the church, there's the story kind of centers around a church, where the church was located, and I kept that. I kept a lot of my notes and stuff from when I was writing it, just for sentimental reasons. But you know, don't even worry about all that. All you have to think about is where you want to start, what you want to write about, and where you want to start. And it's like that song, you know, sing a song. It really doesn't matter if it's good enough for anyone else to hear. Just sing a song. It doesn't matter. If it works for you, if it's what you want to do it. Write it down. It's not going to cost you anything. It's not going to hurt anybody. And like I said, it's always good practice if nothing else. You always learn something. Every time you write, you get better and you learn. And you will be very proud of yourself. It's good therapy, I think. It can give you a real shot of self-esteem to look back and go, wow, you know, I did that. I did that. I wrote that. I came up with a story that no one else has ever heard before. I created that. And it's a tremendous feeling. It's unlike anything I've ever felt. It's a remarkable sense of accomplishment. And even if you never do anything with it, look at all that, my God. It's just ridiculous. Even if you never do anything with it, I really don't think that matters. It's the experience, it's the joy of doing it that really matters. But I think it's different for everybody. Everybody has different things that work for them, you know, that help them, motivate them. Ugh. I can actually kind of tell looking back at my handwriting how tired I was when I wrote certain sections. Some of them are really neat, and some of them my handwriting is slanting all over the place. But I really need to work on my sequel. I haven't done much with it in quite a while. Oh, another thing. Get a good pen. I would recommend getting a good pen. You know, ballpoint pens are fine. Pencils are fine if you prefer that. Personally, especially if you're going to be writing for long periods of time, I want something where I'm not going to have to bear down really hard to make it right. Like a ballpoint pen, you might not realize it, but with a ballpoint pen, you do kind of have to bear down, at least to some extent, to make it right. So I don't ever use ballpoint pens. I use something like this. This is a very fine tip. This is a Uniball Vision Elite, and it's black ink. But it's almost like a super, super fine point marker. And I don't have to bear down at all with this. I just, the ink comes out very smoothly. Some of these pens, the ink comes out kind of blotchy. It's not even at all. It comes out kind of, not lumpy, but it doesn't flow out of the pen easily and evenly. So I prefer the Uniball is a good one. But there are several other ones, but any super fine point marker like this, spend a couple more dollars and get a good quality one, because there is something so satisfying about writing with a really good pen. It really makes a difference, and I write longer with this, number one, because I don't have to bear down and I don't get hand cramps as bad, and number two, it's just pretty to look at when you write. The flow of the ink is perfect, and it's just really neat to look at. For me, anyway, I like it. It makes me happy. So yeah, get a good writing utensil. Pencils I don't like because you have to bear down, you have to sharpen them, stuff like that. But hey, if that's what you like, use it. If you want to write with a crayon, write with a crayon. It doesn't matter. Just do it. And if you can't do it every day, don't beat yourself up about it. But I always have it kind of going in my mind, like there's just one character that came to me when I was writing River Road that really stuck with me. I really liked this character a lot. And I almost feel like I didn't create this character. It's almost like the character came to me. It's almost like really good characters find you. And you don't make them. They just come find you and become part of your story. And this one really did. And this one stuck with me. And I made sure to put that character in my sequel. And it's interesting to see what the character gets into now. This character actually reminds me a lot, like I was saying earlier, reminds me of the imaginary friend, the lizard, that I had as a kid. Not a lot of mischief, but some mischief, some daring, some courage, and some crazy stuff happens when this character is involved. Very quick to throw caution to the wind, and I like that. You never know what's going to happen. So that's why one of the reasons why I wanted to write another story was to bring that character back. I actually kind of missed the character. I wanted to see him again. I wanted to see what they were up to. So I wanted to put him in another story. And that's what I did. And I am enjoying it, although it's really not turning out like I thought it would. I thought it was going to be a lighthearted, fun story, but it's kind of taking a dark turn. But that's okay. I'm going to ride it out. I don't know how it's going to end. I have no idea how it's going to end. No clue. And I can't wait to find out. One thing I did want to say was, this is something I've been thinking about for a couple weeks. Although it would be a tremendous undertaking, it would take a long time. But I am leaning towards possibly doing it. I need to work on a setup for it because I want to be comfortable, because it's going to take a long time. But what I thought I would do, I thought I would make a series of videos, and this would be mainly just my regular voice, or close to it, of me reading this. I mean, it would take forever. It's ridiculously long, and I mean, it would take me forever. It would have to be broken up, obviously, into a bunch of different videos. But I thought about doing a series of me reading this story. But again, it would be a really big project, and it would take a long time to get it all done. But I'm kind of leaning towards doing it. I think I'm going to do it. I'm not sure when I'm going to start, but I think I'm going to do it. I would say, though, And then of course when I get started I would mention this probably in like an introductory video or something. I don't want to give away a lot about the story and what happens, because there's some pretty big spoilers that I don't want to give out, but I would say the story definitely has a lot of religious. I mean, it's a pretty religious story. It deals with Christianity. Um, it does have some profanity in it, not a lot, but it does have some. I kept in mind that my mother would be reading it, and she did, and she loved it, or she said she loved it. And I didn't use any what I would consider to be really heavy duty profanity because I didn't want my mom to read it. So but there is some profanity. There may be some uncomfortable themes related to religion, but again, that's something I'll get into later. What I'm trying to say is it's not a story for everybody. It's not really a kid's bedtime story. I would not let my kids read this at this point. There's some stuff in here that's not appropriate for children. It wasn't written for children. I don't really know who it's written for, but it's not written for little kids. I think they would find it kind of boring anyway. But there are a lot of things that I would just want to say up front before anybody got into listening to it. If you're easily offended by anything related to religion, you may not want to listen to it, because I may touch a nerve with you. And if I do, I'm sorry, but that's just the way it goes. So that's something I'm thinking about doing. And now that I've actually said it, now I'm going to have to do it. But I wanted to find a comfortable setup, and I've been going to Goodwill a lot lately trying to find something. A lot of times I go and they'll have things in there, like they'll have these drafting tables for architects, and they're on a little thing. They're almost like a lectern, and you can swivel it. You can turn the surface. You can angle it however you want, and it has a lip on the bottom so you can put paper on it. I want to find something like that where I can sit comfortably, like I can get my nice comfy computer chair out of my computer room, get my nice comfy chair and my little architect table thing, and it's on wheels. I see them, believe it or not, I see them at Goodwill a lot, but since I've been looking for one, I haven't been able to find one. So that figures. I figure as soon as I go out and buy a new one, they'll have 20 of them in there. That's just the way it goes. But I've been looking for one because I think that would be the perfect setup for me. Like and this story is split up into chapters. There are over 100 chapters. So what I could do possibly is, I don't know, do 5-6 chapters per video. I'm not really sure how it would work out. We'll just have to see. Just break it down and do, a certain number of chapters per video. And that way I can just go ahead and take those chapters out, set it on my little architect table, sit in my comfy chair, and just sit there and read it and be comfortable. And that way, if I had time, I could make 2 or 3 videos at a time if I had the time to do it. And I think that would be a good setup instead of sitting here trying to hold it and read it, which I mean is doable, but I'm looking at, this is a lot to read, and I want to be able to do it comfortably where I can pay attention to reading and not, holding a stack of paper on my lap. So I'm working on that. So I will share my story with anybody who wants to hear it. The only people who have read it so far, I think the only people who have read it are my mom and my brother. I haven't really shared it with a lot of people, because it is kind of a different story, and it's not one that a lot of people would want to hear. If you're really, really, really religious, you might not want to hear it. It might offend you, honestly. And I've known people in my life that I would never show that to because it would offend them. Oh my God, they'd turn inside out. They were so offended by it. So it's not for everybody, but I'm going to read it for anybody who wants to hear it as soon as I can find something to hold my papers up. So that's what I've been thinking about. And I would just say, if you want to write, no matter what it is you want to write, you should. Maybe write about things you know, things that you're familiar with, or just, something that helps me. If I want to write, you just sit down with your paper and you just start writing. Just, it doesn't even matter what you write. Just write about the first thing you think about. Just start writing about it. It doesn't matter if it makes any sense or not. It makes no difference if it makes any sense. Just write it down as it comes into your mind. And you will find a flow there. You will find yourself getting into it. And you will start to write something. It won't just be random. It will become something the more you write. It's fascinating how that works. So yeah, I think you should do it. Whatever it is you want to do. If you want to paint, you want to draw, you want to sing, you want to write, you should. The world needs more creativity, I think. I think a lot of people anymore don't do that. And I think that's a shame. I think more people should try it. Don't be afraid. But I'm always afraid. I say don't be afraid, but I'm always afraid. When I start writing something like that, I'm always afraid. It's scary. Something about it is scary. And it really freaks me out, but I do it anyway. Just get started and you'll be all right. So that's really all the advice I have at this point. Or it's not really even advice. It's just stuff that has worked for me or things that I've learned. And I will get started on this hopefully soon. If I can find something to set it on and read it, I will make some videos and I will read my story to you if you're interested. But thank you for watching my video, and I will see you soon. My next video will be more normal than this. It'll be something a little more traditional. But thank you again for watching.